I started using Reddit at a young age. I started using social media in general at a really young age. And severe social media usage, especially for a young, impressionable, stupid child, is pretty unhealthy, to say the least. And the consequences of this action have resulted in 6 years of regular Reddit usage. Scrolling for hours until my brain turns to mush. And at times I questioned, why? Why use this app for hours just to get ever-deteriorating pinches of dopamine in return? But today, ladies and gentlemen, I found the answer. And it derives from one single source, one legendary Redditor some can only dream about. SpellbookPennysWorth. I stumbled upon this Redditor on this post in r/animation. I'm just gonna let the whole video play, you need to see this. But what interested me even more was the title and long description. Why do I even bother? Hey guys, animator and novice beekeeper here. Remember this phrase. It is very important. I recently decided to take a step back from working on my game to reconsider my next steps. You see, I've been working on it for almost a month now, but I've made next to zero actual progress. It took me a while to figure it out. The reason why development was going so poorly is that I just don't resonate with the current state of the game. The issue is that I don't have much money to work with, so if I want to financially support myself, I would have to make mass-produced slop garbage, because that's what people want. To start, I spent an entire day printing AI-generated anime posters and selling them to people outside of dispensaries. By the end of the day, not only had I not sold a single poster, but I was down $40 because I needed to buy printer ink since my parents just hate me so much for no apparent reason and wouldn't let me use the ink that was already in the printer because God forbid I try to become financially independent. Anyway, that whole ordeal left me pretty hopeless. It seemed like every single one of my endeavors was just doomed to fail because of circumstances completely out of my control. But as fortune would have it, I was hidden by a sudden spark of inspiration. I was playing this mobile game that came out recently when I realized what my game was missing. Horse management mechanics. I came up with the idea of having a 2D hand-animated death cutscene to increase the emotional impact of losing a horse. So I decided I would try by implementing the cutscene since I had some experience in animation. But after a few rewatches, I came to a terrible realization. It was Dude, listen, this is honestly a great animation. It might not have been what he was going for, but it's entertaining as hell, something a lot of high-quality animations lack. So after watching that masterpiece, I had to look through this guy's entire profile to see what other gold I could find. I didn't even have to scratch the surface. r/cleaning and tidying. I just want it gone. Hey guys, Novice Beekeeper here. This is on every single one of his posts, by the way. I've gotten myself into a really bad situation, and I don't know what to do. For context, ever since I started beekeeping, I've been collecting all the bees that die of natural causes and preserving them in my fridge. My plan was to reconstitute the dead bees into a sort of fertilizer substance and use it to grow the flowers, but they've just been sitting in my fridge for months now. At least they were, up until a few days ago. You see, I've been hiding the bees in my empty water bottle so my parents wouldn't see them. It worked perfectly, but my parents decided to buy me a new water bottle because the old one was too dented and scratched up. Neither of those things matter, it's a water bottle. Which obviously meant that they could just open up my old water bottle without my permission. They were absolutely furious and immediately called me downstairs and started berating me over my bees that I keep in my water bottle that's in my section of the fridge. They told me to get rid of the bees immediately and even threatened to take away my beehive. Even though the time wasn't right, I knew I had to make my bee fertilizer now, before it's too late. I didn't even have time to look up proper procedures since I was so rushed for time, so I kinda just had to make up the steps as I went. First, I crushed up the bees until they were a sort of gravel/silt type state. I then threw the bee remains in a glass bowl and filled it up with water, starch, and baking soda. A few minutes in the microwave and I'm left with this congealed black sludge that makes my fingers itch when I touch it. I knew that this wasn't proper fertilizer and that made me infuriated. All those dead bees were desecrated and wasted because my parents were rushing to get rid of them for no apparent reason other than to spite me. In my rage, I hurled the glass bowl at my bedroom wall, splattering the sludge all over my room. leaving me in tears and covered in goo. Besides cleaning up this mess, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, you need help. If you're so driven by your emotions that you begin projects with no plan or research and throw things when it doesn't go your way, especially in your parents' house, not your own, you need to learn to regulate your emotions. I am driven by one thing and one thing alone. Passion. r/D&D. They abandoned my campaign. Why? Hey guys, Dungeon Master and Novice Beekeeper. He said the thing! For the last 3 years, I've been hosting a couple campaigns with some of my school friends. Recently, I've begun to suspect that they're fed up with my storytelling. For context, at the start of high school, I hosted my very first campaign, a sort of dark fantasy B-type story. Needless to say, it was a great hit amongst my peers. I credited most of this success to my original villain character, Beestar. He's a clever, conniving bee/skeleton type apparition who wields powerful smoke that subdues bees and humans alike. Eventually, all good things have to come to an end, and the party defeated Beestar in a triumphant and satisfying conclusion. After the success of the first campaign, my friends wanted me to continue DMing, so I got to work on workshopping my next campaign. In this one, the setting was a land far north, one that had harnessed the powerful technology of the previous civilization. I wanted to include elements from my previous campaign while also focusing on a fresh and new story. While a little hesitant at first, my friends quickly became engrossed in my storytelling. I even received various comments about my new villain character being quite interesting, although never to the same level as Beestar. That's when it hit me. I could never make another character as interesting as Beestar, leaving me with but a single option. During the climax of the story, while my party was fighting the lame, uninspired wasp-type villain, a familiar face reared his skeletal head. Beestar had returned, and in dramatic fashion, he one-shotted the previously established villain, now taking the reins as the final boss. While visibly confused, my party triumphed on nonetheless, and eventually defeated Beestar for a second time. With this campaign over, one of my friends suggested that they could DM if I had gotten tired of it. I wasn't really sure where this had come from, given my previous enthusiasm, so I assured him that I would continue DMing, with or without him. After this conversation, he decided that he wanted a break from D&D for a while, so he sat out my next campaign. This whole ordeal wanted me to work extra hard on this one. I had to one-up the previous two to encourage him to come back. So I got to scheming. I decided on a completely new, genre-defining world and setting, a sci-fi laboratory complex, overrun with hellish insectoid demons, and so the campaign begun. The remaining members of my party trudged through the complex in spite of our increasingly infrequent meetings, school and such. Despite this, they made good progress in learning the lore of this desolate facility and the villainous doctor that occupied it. While this was all well and good, something felt missing. In making this completely new setting, I had lost sight of what made my original campaign so special. I knew what had to be done. No, please man, don't do this. During the next meeting, the party walked into a dimly lit room. The villainous doctor's body laid lifeless on the floor, bloodied and mangled beyond recognition. A shadowy, skeletal figure towered above his corpse. "The public cannot know about the starch of bees," the figure exclaimed. The figure swiftly left the scene, ending the meeting for that day. That night, I rested with a smile on my face, knowing that the cliffhanger I'd worked so very hard to insert into previously established lore had paid off. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to continue this story ever since. Every time I try to organize a meetup, all my friends seem to be busy. This has been going on for 6 months now, despite my weekly efforts to continue the campaign. I think they might be a little tired of Beestar, man. It's okay. I love Beestar for who he is. r/3D printing. Hey guys, 3D artist and novice beekeeper here. I felt so down after my most recent animation faced harsh criticism that I just started searching through my dad's stuff for something to break. That was when I stumbled upon a roll of yellow plastic filament and a genius idea came to mind. At conventions, there's always someone selling their mass-produced 3D printed slop and making a fortune. It seemed easy enough to do, so there is no doubt in my mind that I could start doing the exact same thing, but with bee-themed merchandise. However, there's a little problem. Being absolutely broke, I had no access of a 3D printer of my own, meaning I would have to melt this filament myself and create a bee-like prototype with my very own 2 hands. No matter, I grabbed a lighter and got to work. After 2 painstaking hours, I finally completed my model. For the last touch, I finished off the piece by drawing on the eyes, striped, and, my favorite part, stinger of the bee using a Sharpie. My creation, now dubbed Beesworth, finally in the flesh. but he just looks awful. Like, genuinely, he looks so horrible. I threw him at the wall a couple times out of sheer embarrassment before finding him and recording this video. I even felt like puking, but I held it in. There's absolutely no way I could sell this garbage at a convention. I'm thinking that maybe I could start selling these to my local elementary school kids, but the teachers know my face. Not in like a weird way. I just have really dense bones and almost drowned on a field trip, so they might remember. Man, there are free 3D printers at the library. But I think in general, I think this guy's way too harsh on himself. You're doing a whole bunch of new things. You should expect to fail. Now when I say that, I don't mean give up, but expect to not get things the first try. Skills can take years to learn, so fail, but ultimately you should get up and try again. Just in case though, I reached out and asked if he was doing alright. Do not fret. My bees and I are in perfect health. At least he's still kicking. If you look at his profile, he has an important list of bee slang terminology. I'll share some of my favorites. Sleeve, worker bee, weavers, group of beekeepers, UI, user interface, the friggy, industrial grade bee refrigerator used for inducing artificial hibernation. For bee usage only. My bees. It just says my bees, that's all it says. Stone. When a bee becomes permanently immobile due to prolonged artificial hibernation. Silt. The finely ground remains of a stoned bee. Starch of bees. It says nothing. Starch of bees remains a mystery. Barking. Placing 2 or more bees onto a strip of tape. Bee press. Mapping a bee from a 3-dimensional object onto a flattened 2-dimensional plane via a heavy 30 kilogram or greater flat object. Bee-nematics, the method used to calculate bee trajectory from an eternal launch mechanism. Bee-lorimetry, the act of spontaneously combusting a bee using an enclosed high-pressure gas device. Beaming, subjecting bees to highly concentrated light source or laser. The Pennyworth procedure. The complete deconstruction of a bee into its constituent elements. Beestar. Recurring villainous bee/skeleton type character. Wasp slurs. Stintar. If this account isn't satire, I think SpellbookPennysWorth just needs a healthy break off the internet and needs to be less harsh on himself. And so do a lot of us, to be honest. Beekeeping sounds like a super cool hobby and pathway, dude. I just don't know if bee sludge is the way to go. Anyway, I'd like to end this off with when I asked for permission to make this video. Some of the stories you write are really entertaining to read and some of the highlights of my day. I was wondering if I could compile all of them into a YouTube video with dub/editing. Credit would be given, of course. That would be alright with me. You're a legend.